Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Social Media and Digital Marketing, Tips to Boost Your Graduate Recruitment. I would now like to introduce Capture's Director of Graduate and Online Initiatives, Jack Klett.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Capture Higher Ed podcast for Graduate Enrollment Management and Enrollment Marketing Professionals. Alicia, as always, thanks for teeing us up. I am Jack Klett, Director of Graduate and Online Initiatives for Capture Higher Ed. I am super excited about our conversation today as we unpack a pretty key question. How should graduate recruitment and enrollment marketing professionals leverage social media and e-marketing and digital marketing to assist in their important work? This is a question that is often asked. There are presentations at conferences about this topic, and I am super fortunate to be joined by Dr. Stanley Kania, who will share the results of his recently published study on the topic. Dr. Kania, Stan, thanks for joining me today.
No problem, Jack. Thrilled to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I hope everyone is having a fantastic Wednesday, and I'm excited to share with you some information from my research, but more importantly, some best practices that we could use as higher education enrollment professionals to boost our enrollment through the use of social media and various e-marketing practices. So I'm super excited about today's conversation.
Well, thank you, sir. This is a pretty interesting topic. In part, for me, I think about it that there are a lot of us who tend to think of social media marketing as if it has been around forever, when in fact, we've really only witnessed its birth not much longer than a decade ago. I distinctly remember, Stan, my first social media campaign leveraging social recruitment, social engagement through Facebook for a new Master of Science in Sustainable Design at Philadelphia University. This is going back to, I think, 2007, 2008. And the results obviously were impressive. We scaled it, we expanded it, and then social became a big piece of our recruitment work. And certainly Philly U was not alone in that, as other institutions saw the benefits and expanded into that area. So thank you for giving this topic the attention you have. If you don't mind, if you would share with the audience a bit about yourself, and one thing you may not know about me, some audience members do, because this is not their first rodeo for a GEM webinar with me. I am a sucker for origin stories. So just how we know how Tony Stark ultimately became Iron Man, Stan, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us your higher ed origin story.
Sure, absolutely. And it's one that came completely out of the blue. So when I first graduated college, I had zero interest in working in higher education. I was a recent college grad and said, I'm just out of college. Why in the world would I want to go back there, especially as an employee? I want to get out into the real world and experience life and everything that it has to offer. Couldn't find a job, and there was a part-time admissions counselor position in graduate studies at my alma mater, Marywood University in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And I said, well, I think I kind of know the institution well enough. I was unofficially dubbed the mayor of Marywood when I was a student, because when I was there, it was like the old school show Cheers, where everyone knows your name. So I knew everyone, and they all knew me, for better or for worse. Mostly for better, just to throw that in there. So I decided to apply for the position and was offered the job, and that's when I started my higher ed career. And I said, well, am I going to just stick this out so they could pay for my master's degree and try to move on into professional industry? And as I continued my education, getting a master's in business administration, I realized how higher education, in essence, is a business, and how you need to be strategic in the way in which you plan and organize and develop long-range strategic plans, how you collaborate and work with different teams to achieve the strategic mission and vision of the institution. So for me, at that point, I fell in love with higher ed and said, this is the industry I need to stay in. I was fortunate enough to also work there while I was pursuing my doctorate degree. And then I transitioned in my role at Marywood from just being an admissions counselor to being the admissions lead and the admissions director for our physician assistant program, which then led to me now landing my job at Geisinger Commonwealth School of Medicine and assisting them recruit future physicians of tomorrow. So that's kind of my story. I kind of fell into higher education by mistake, but it was one of the best mistakes I ever made.
Amen. I say preach, brother. That is exactly, I think that's a bit of a common story. I mean, in the sense that one of the things that higher ed origin stories, I think, always share is that it's something that kind of happens to us. And at some point we say, hey, you know what? This kind of happened to me, but I'm going to own that and claim it. And this is going to be a fantastic career. And I know for me, I blinked my eyes and 20 years later, I'm still in the field, and it's been a worthwhile endeavor, that's for sure. For the benefit of our audience, Stan recently presented the findings of his study as part of NAGAP's Perspectives Journal. So for those of you who are members of NAGAP, you might find some of this very familiar if you read through that particular journal entry. And also, Stan presented these findings at the PAGAP annual meeting this past, well, gosh, I think it was only a couple months ago. In fact, I first came across the study as when my Perspectives Journal arrived at home. And then I know I had a morning session at PAGAP, and I was happy to see when I arrived that you were in the afternoon session. In fact, you were the lunch session. So I give you credit, Stan, because as people were kind of carb crashing, they were still engaged in your presentation. And that was when I said, this is something we have to share with the broader Capture community. So thanks again for being here. I will ask you this question and then kind of turn the reins over to you. Part of my role at Capture is to have conversations with GEM practitioners across the country. This allows me to stay on top of market trends and also kind of the key pain points that graduate enrollment professionals are experiencing, and then obviously head back to the team here at Capture and try to solve for those pains and those challenges. One of the pains that I hear all the time is about the tight budget constraints that GEM professionals operate in. So I know that I guess this is a question to you. Some of what we are going to chat about today will indeed be budget friendly, correct?
Absolutely. That's one of the three main areas of the research study that I conducted, is definitely about budget constraints. That's one thing that we hear all the time across higher education. And with that, I'd like to show you this. Who all has a VP of enrollment that sounds like this? If you could recruit more grad students with no budget increase, that'd be great. So we all, over the past couple of years, have been asked time and time and time again to do more with less, to recruit more students with less money, being able to recruit students in the most effective way. And that's become very, very difficult for us as higher ed professionals and practitioners to recruit more students, because we know that students are working smarter, not harder, when it comes to finding an institution that's the best fit for them. They're using different modalities to conduct their research for finding that perfect graduate school, whether it be looking at your traditional website or using social media to engage with institutions. So the whole purpose of this presentation is to not only highlight what we could do as practitioners to increase our social media and e-marketing recruitment tactics, but also to use these results and best practices as a way to justify to our VPs of enrollment and our directors of enrollment management to say, yes, not only can I recruit you more students, but I could do so if you give me the appropriate budget. And here are justifications why you should give me more money and how that money will be used to the best ability, to our best ability to recruit those students and be able to effectively help us gain a positive ROI for the institution. So what we're going to talk about today, I'm going to talk about briefly, kick it off by talking about the integrated interdependent model of graduate enrollment management. So to talk about how different offices across campus work in tandem to help recruit students. Then I'm going to talk about the study that I conducted on social media and e-marketing, and I'm going to talk about those results, each one in that order: social media, e-marketing, and then the budget. Then we're going to take a little dive into see what some other schools are doing to recruit graduate students. What types of social media modalities are they using? What's working well, what's not working well, but also what social media tools are out there at your disposal that you could do to help research and find a larger graduate student population that which you can market your programs to. Then I'm going to get into what I call Dr. K's takeaways, my top 3 key recommendations to improve your social media and e-marketing results in order to recruit more students. And then we're going to kick it off into a Q&A at that point. So first I want to talk about, as I said before, the integrated interdependent model of GEM. And this is something that's very central to our profession, but also central to NAGAP. So as we look here in the picture on the right, you can see that we have various offices at the institution, such as recruitment and marketing, admissions operations, advising and retention, financial aid, student support services. The whole purpose of this interdependent model is to integrate all these various offices into enrollment planning. So what we do is we take these various employees and stakeholders and we cross-train them between departments so we could all best assist students in all aspects of enrollment management. So when we look at the life cycle of the student, we want to cross-train our employees in our different departments to assist students all the way from the point of inquiry all the way through enrollment, matriculation, and then graduation, and thereafter into becoming an alumnus of the institution. So this model, as you can see, it really emphasizes that it takes a village mantra. So we always hear the old phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. In essence, in higher education, it also takes that same village to recruit, retain, and graduate a student. So this model has become very, very significant and important for us as not only scholars, but practitioners in higher education enrollment management.
Yeah, it really has, and I'm glad you brought it up. And I would direct everyone to capturehighered.com/webinars. Back in December, I believe it was, I had the opportunity to do a webinar. The topic was the state of GEM. So we looked at kind of the history of it, the current state, and then predicted the future, if you will. And I sat down with NAGAP's president, Keith Ramsdell, and also NAGAP's vice president, Jeremiah Nelson. And we were able to share some different models and really talk about the current state of the interdependent model. So again, capturehighered.com/webinars for the state of GEM. But you're right, it does indeed take a village.
Absolutely. So now looking at the study that I conducted, this was a study that I actually conducted as my doctoral dissertation research. I wanted to take on a research project that not only would help me attain those magical 3 little letters that come after my name, but more importantly, I wanted to conduct a research study that allowed me as a professional and a practitioner in enrollment management to make a positive impact, not only on growing the scholarly literature around our field, which quite honestly, if any of you have looked at it, is quite bleak at best. So we need to conduct some more robust studies in GEM to beefen up our scholarly literature. But more importantly, I did this study to help us identify ways in which we could become better practitioners in our everyday to-day jobs. So that's why I did this study. So this was a national, my apologies there. So this study was a national study that was distributed by NAGAP as a partnership between them and myself. It was distributed to 4-year public and private nonprofit colleges and universities in the United States. And as predicted, this, in the title, this study was supposed to identify various social media and e-marketing practices that we use on a day-to-day basis to recruit graduate students. I understood going into it, doing a national study was quite an undertaking and quite a task at hand. And unfortunately, I did receive a very low response rate. We only heard back from 23 public institutions and 14 private institutions. Some reasons why as to the response rate was so low was because, number one, as higher ed practitioners and enrollment management professionals, we always have students that pop in and out of our office that need our assistance. So that could have taken people away from their computers to finish the survey. But more importantly, and which I think is a greater reason why the response rate was so low, is number two, sometimes institutions don't want to share their secret sauce. They don't want to share what recruitment tactics they're using because they like to keep those secrets close to their vest. They don't want their competitors understanding what they're doing so they could try to gain a competitive advantage against other institutions. So that is another reason that I attributed to a lower response rate. So looking at and analyzing the results right now, as you can see here, looking at social media, some of the major highlights, as I call the big five social media sites. So Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter are used more by private institutions compared to public institutions. According to Omnicore Agency, which is a national advertising firm, looking at social media active monthly users in 2018, Facebook had a record 2.23 billion monthly users, YouTube around 1.9 billion, Instagram about 1 billion, Twitter 335 million, and LinkedIn 63 million users. So just by using the top 5 social media outlets available, you're going to reach a large audience that is looking at your institution, that is engaged or liking pages or watching videos and sharing photos and posts on their social media accounts. The Omnicore Agency also reports that approximately 59% of Americans between ages 18 and 29 are using Instagram, and 36% are using Twitter. So that's actually a large increase from years past for these two specific social media platforms. The one that's most commonly used by all institutions is Facebook. And that's where we see a lot of institutions doing their social media marketing is on Facebook. So looking at the results for e-marketing practices, as you can see, institutions had a wide variety of different e-marketing practices that they could select that they use or have used. So a couple big points that we see here is that private institutions, again, are using e-marketing practices and specific e-marketing practices in a unique way and differently than public institutions. For example, the major statistical differences were found where private institutions were not only using more, but more often, online display advertising, pay-per-click ads on search sites like Bing or Google. They're having special landing pages for email campaigns. They're using cookie-driven retargeting, and they're tailoring info specifically for students based off of their social media profiles, which is very, very unique. And also quite time-consuming to do because you want to make that as personalized as possible. So the one thing that we found is that cookie-driven retargeting and tailored information for students ensures that institutions are sending that specific info to a target audience or to a student to spark their engagement. They want to send out posts and pictures and videos that are not only going to engage with the students, but make them respond. And that's where those conversations really kick off between the student and the admissions counselor. Since retargeting ads and email campaigns send prospects most of the time to those specific landing pages, institutions need to ensure that they have a well-designed and user-friendly website to ensure that students are able to make that initial inquiry, they're able to get the information they need, and they're always able to stay in contact with the institution, so there's no break in that communication. The one thing that we all know, who, for those of you out there in the webinar that actually use social media and e-marketing practices out there, you know that using certain social media campaigns and pay-per-click ads in some instances can cost as little as $1 per day. And most of them nowadays are developed to the point where they could be integrated into various CRM systems. So you could track and analyze how well a certain post or a video is performing. How many times have students clicked on a link or revisited or reopened a certain email? What's your click-through rate? What's your visit rate to your website, to whatever landing page is associated with your post or your email blast, et cetera, et cetera. So it's great now that a lot of those technologies, those data analytics are readily available for us. That way it allows us to make better strategic decisions when it comes time to using our budget money, no matter how big or small our budgets are at that point. The one thing that I do want to point out as an exception to the rule here, I'd like to throw out, would be those larger private institutions such as Ivy League colleges and universities. A lot of them rely heavily on their brand recognition and their reputation to maintain and sustain graduate student enrollment. So if there are any outliers, in my opinion, I think that those would certainly be some outliers to this entire study, is that, Harvard doesn't really have to market as much as they do, because the je ne sais quoi of getting a Harvard degree is going to just in and of itself have students apply time and time again to be a student at that prestigious institution. So kind of one of the coup de grace results, as I like to say, the budgets, because everyone always wants to know, yes, the budget, what can I do? What budgets do other schools have out there? Well, even though the response rate was quite low, as you can see here, there are major significant differences in overall GEM marketing budgets between public and private institutions. 50% of all the private institution respondents report having at least an overall GEM marketing budget of $50,001 or more. Surprisingly, 6 private institutions, so 42.86% of the respondents, report having an approximate GEM marketing budget over $75,000. I don't know about all of you out there, but that is a large amount of money for GEM marketing, especially when you're using social media and certain e-marketing practices. That's a lot of moolah to put in and pump into this type of marketing strategy. Ironically, public institutions, over 65% of them say, nope, we don't need a budget that big. Our overall GEM marketing budget is under $25,000. So wow, that's a huge, huge difference. And as we look down further and we looked at a budget specifically for social media and specifically for e-marketing, we also saw that just a little under half of, actually about 35% of private institutions have an e-marketing budget of between $50,000 and $75,000. A majority of them have an e-marketing budget under $25,000. Almost all, except for 2 public institutions, have an e-marketing budget under $25,000. And as we can see, social media marketing budgets somewhat similar. An overwhelming majority of above public institutions have it under $25,000, and half of privates have it under $25,000 as well. So that shows that they're not really pumping so much money into social media and e-marketing. Where they're spending a majority of that marketing budget is probably in traditional print, brochures, flyers, things like that.
Yeah, it's interesting, Stan, because one of the things that I actually had a presentation yesterday on the future of digital, and it was fascinating to see the amount of money that is being shifted to digital advertising as compared to traditional advertising. So, for example, traditional advertising is seeing a decrease of about 9% over the course of the next 5 years. Meanwhile, the amount of money and resources being put into digital ad spending is going up 60%. And actually, it's projected this year that digital advertising will, for the first time, surpass in terms of ad spend traditional advertising. So it's pretty fascinating as we see folks kind of begin to shift their marketing budgets from more traditional methods to more digital focused methods. I do have a quick question for you about the budget piece of your study.
Sure.
When I was one of the institutions where I served as a chief enrollment officer, I had my centralized budget, right, that was earmarked for graduate admissions or graduate recruitment. But then for each of the graduate programs for which I recruited, there would be a shift of budget dollars. So they would basically be a front end in July when the budgets were released. Each of those programs would push over into the graduate marketing budget between $10,000 or $15,000 each for that year's marketing work. Which, if you take about 30 graduate programs, you can see kind of how that budget expanded once I received that budget, those budget transfers. Did your study kind of take into account contextually anything about the budgets, or was it strictly, hey, how much are you spending for, on social marketing, and what is your overall marketing budget?
Sure. So the study just looked at what their overall GEM budget is, and then as a subset, how much money is being sent or allocated for social media marketing, how much money is being allocated for specifically e-marketing. So that's just what it was. It was a broad stroke looking at it, so to speak. So what I have in the works as a future study is to actually try to quantify exactly how social media impacts a student's decision to inquire, apply, enroll, and matriculate into a specific institution, looking at social media. So if you could imagine the admissions funnel starting with prospect or inquiry and going all the way down to enrolled student, at each level of the admissions funnel, how does social media impact and influence a student's decision to go to the next level in the admissions funnel? So it's a really interesting study. It's going to be the first of its kind to actually try to quantify how social media is truly impacting applications and student decisions at each individual level of the admissions funnel. So it's really, really interesting, and hopefully I'll have that wrapped up in the next year and a half. So I'm really excited about that study. It's kind of a follow-up. And then that tangentially will also have an impact as to budget to say, okay, if we're going to spend more money in social media at that time, which aspect of the admissions funnel should we be spending more money on? Is it to really, increase students in going from inquiry to applicant, or really trying to push students to make their deposit and commit to the institution? So it's a fascinating study the way I have it kind of set up. But getting back to your point before about how schools are making that transition to more digital marketing, I mean, Generation Z nowadays, the younger kids, that's all they do is social media. A couple of years ago, Gil Rogers from Chegg, when he worked there, they did a study looking at high school students and the impact of social media and influence on them making a decision to enroll into a specific college. There was 7 out of 10 students said that social media had a high influence on their decision as to whether or not to apply or enroll in an institution. So if students are using social media to that great of an extent to research undergrad institutions, they're going to go back to that level of comfort when it comes time to research graduate institutions. So that's even another reason why that schools should be pumping more money into social media and digital advertising, because students that are younger nowadays, they're using social media constantly. So if they're used to doing research one way, they're going to go back to what's familiar to them.
Yeah, and a great stat that kind of stood out to me, 75% of our prospects in grad are bypassing the traditional marketing methods, which is pretty fascinating. They're going right online and in doing so are doing non-branded searches, right? So they're going online and typing in, rather than typing in Philadelphia University MBA, they're typing in, MBAs in the Philadelphia region, right? So it's really kind of fascinating to see how digital can be used, especially via what we refer to as kind of paid social prospecting, right? So digital ads placed on social media as a way to bring kind of unknown folks into your funnel, but based on certain kind of persona qualities that resonate with the specific populations you're trying to recruit for. Awesome. All right, cool. Well, I'm looking forward to the second part of your study, I guess.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You got
So
it.
we're going to kick into gear now to see what other schools are doing. So I just have a couple of examples here of what some other schools are doing. And as we see here, Facebook Twitter marketing is, of course, very, very big now, as you indicated before, Jack, and as my research shows. So Warren, they have a video up here. UC San Diego, they have various pictures up there. One thing that we always try to emphasize in marketing, and anyone that looks at marketing knows that they want to make sure they're putting out posts that are engaging, that they're going to catch the eye of your target audience, and it's going to you want them to respond in a certain way, have a certain reaction, take action. So call to action buttons are really, really popular, and videos are great. Students, it's easy for them to share, it's easy for them to watch. So they're widely used on Facebook and Twitter. Another interesting thing is the LinkedIn Alumni tool, and I'm not sure if a lot of people are familiar with it, but LinkedIn, you could actually do some research as to students that went to your institution to try to recruit them to come back for graduate school. So I know a lot of places, for example, if you're a school that has, say, an executive MBA, one thing you could use the LinkedIn Alumni tool for is to actually find your former students, find your alumni, and send specific targeted marketing ads to them about such a program like an EMBA. So I'm going to just switch over here and show you really quick two examples. So here, my beloved alma mater, Marywood University, woohoo, go Pacers. The one thing in the alumni tool here, so when I go to the alumni tool, I could see that we have a little bit over 13,000 alumni on LinkedIn. If I scroll down the page, I can see exactly who these people are, as long as they, have that information and they say it's okay to share that on their LinkedIn profile. But then more importantly, you could actually mine this data. You could segment it based off of a couple different things. You could segment it based off of their geographic location as to where they live. You can look at exactly specific places where they look, or where they work. So you can look for these individuals who work in a certain field that may be interested in a certain program. You could segment it by year. So if I want to just look at alumni from the past 10 years, you could segment the data based off of that. If you're looking for them that work at a specific company, you could put it in the search bar here. The data is also segmented by what they do, so what type of field they work in, what they studied when they were enrolled at the institution, and then what are their top skills. So these are ways that you, as a free resource, might I add, this is free dollars and no cents, that we could use as professionals on an everyday basis to help find some future students, to figure out if I wanted to market this new program on LinkedIn, what kind of capture audience would I have? What kind of capture audience would I have from my own alumni? So I just wanted to show my alma mater, and then looking at the Wharton School, as we'll find out as soon as it pops up, they have a lot of alumni that work at places like the Wharton School or Google or Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley. And again, the same type of data is all readily available. So this is a great thing, a great tool that we could use as practitioners to try to identify a larger prospective applicant pool. Switching back over to the presentation. Online virtual career fairs are also becoming very, very popular nowadays. it's especially popular with schools that maybe have not only budget constraints, because typically it's a lot cheaper to do a virtual career fair than it is to actually pick up and ship a counselor or a representative maybe a couple states away, halfway across the country to do recruitment based off of where your geographic hotspots are, where you get a large target population. So it's very budget friendly, and it also allows you to expand your geographic reach without spending too much of your budget money at the same time. So virtual online career fairs are very popular. A lot of them are could be offered by like organizations like Career Eco, other major companies and platforms like that. So a lot of schools will use these now as a way to engage students and for recruiters to engage those students on a more of a national basis. And then text messaging platforms. So the one thing that we use here is Mongoose Cadence. It's a great texting service and texting platform that we use that we can engage with students in real time. There's a mobile app for it. There's a desktop version for it as well. We could create and segment messages and tailor them exactly for students. We could have certain messages go out at various stages of the admissions funnel. So when we know a student has inquired, we could send them maybe, a coupon code where they could apply and get their application fee waived, or they can get an email or a text that says, hey, congratulations on your acceptance. Now here's the link to pay your deposit and confirm your seat, so we can then start getting you enrolled and getting you everything that you need to start the program here next semester. So we could really segment it and tailor it exactly towards students at various stages of the funnel. But more importantly, as I said, because it could be used in that real-time aspect. This is an example that I put up there last year. We were doing interviews. At a Saturday, we had an impending snowstorm coming in the Northeast, as was kind of, synonymous last winter. So we had to change their interview schedule. So I sent out mass text messages to everyone that was scheduled for the next day to say, here's the changes. And if there was a problem with their travel or they couldn't make it, they could respond to that text number. It was a specific text number for me. It would come right to my phone via the mobile app, and I'd be able to connect with students and figure out what's going on and what accommodations I would need to make on the spot. So this is a really good texting platform that's available to higher education professionals, not just with Mongoose, but there are a lot of different softwares out there that can be used as well.
Yeah, and Stan, I would like to let the members of our audience know that Capture and Mongoose do indeed work together. So for those of you who are using Capture Behavioral Engagement, which is Capture's behavioral intelligence platform, and are also using Mongoose, we are able to send text messages that are triggered based on certain behavioral rule sets. So for example, if someone is visiting your website and she has visited the MBA page, for example, this online behavior will trigger the send of a registration text for an upcoming MBA information session, for example. Or if she is in admitted status and you're waiting for a deposit and she comes to the website, she'll receive a text shortly thereafter, after exiting the website, just reminding her of her deposit. So the goal there obviously is to partner with Mongoose so that we're sending these text messages when that prospective student is most engaged and therefore most receptive to communicating with us.
Awesome. Yeah, I use it all the time. I really like it because it allows me to add that personal touch where the student's not just getting, a robotic message. I'm able to tailor it exactly towards the student, pick out a couple things from their application that makes them stand out and say, based off of, your volunteer service and, at XYZ place, or your clinical experience at ABC Hospital, the admissions committee really feels you're able to stand out. And, we're happy to offer you admission into our master's program in biomedical sciences. But by making it more personal, the students engage with it better. They don't feel like they're getting just a blanket, congratulations, first name, you have been admitted into the Master of Biomedical Sciences program at Geisinger Commonwealth School of Medicine, and it sounds very robotic and monotone. So that's why I really like to use it.
Yeah, and obviously, not everything is good for text. I mean, we wouldn't do kind of a long kind of student story
Right.
or, alumni success story or faculty profile, right? Like that's more appropriate for, something maybe communicated through email or something like that. So these kind
Yep.
of quick, rapid, personalized calls to action that are really relevant. I think relevancy is really important when it comes to text. Stan, I know we're going to get into Dr. K's takeaways, but before we do so, I just want to remind folks that there is a little webinar control panel that you have access to that has a questions text box. So if you have any questions for me, for Stan, by all means, go ahead and post those in the questions text box. Alicia and I will be going through those after we benefit from Stan's takeaways.
Hmm.
Back to you,
And
sir.
one thing I want to add before I kick into the takeaways, Jack, is
Yep.
one thing that I like to use the text software for is when I know I'm going to go give a presentation at a specific school or go to a specific fair, and I have prospects from that region or from that school, I send them a text message that says, hey, I'm going to be here at this day, this time, talking about this. Stop by the table, learn more about our programs, learn more about how we can help you launch a career in medicine. So, I mean, that's another thing that I really use it for more often than anything is just communicating with students, for travel and stuff like that.
That's great. Good strategy.
So, thank you. So, kicking into the takeaways, what are some of the top things? So, the first recommendation, you want to start small. So if you are someone that says, hey, we're looking at going into this area, I'm not really sure how to start, how should I really get the ball rolling? So start small by developing a social media calendar. Plan out content and outreach initiatives. Typically, and I'll show you on the next slide, an example of a social media calendar, but the information you input on there should include some basic information such as the date, the type of content you want to push out, any associated media such as photos, graphics, or videos that you're going to really need to rely on your marketing and communications department to maybe help you, develop and create. If they have to run some B-roll or whatever to try to make sure you're capturing what you want. And then also include what social media channels you want to push out that content on. By doing this and using a social media calendar, it will help you better align your social media messaging during various times of the recruitment cycle to create consistency and congruency among all of your communication pieces with all of your prospects. So again, if you know that, you're getting later in the cycle and you're saying, all hope is not lost. There's still time to apply. There's still time to get in. We have rolling admission. Get your application in today. Or you have, a whole host of students that are still on the fence. They're admitted, but they haven't deposited yet. Doing another push at that stage of the admissions funnel can really help possibly make them deposit or give them that extra push to say, yep, I do want to go to XYZ institution, and they're going to make that deposit. So this is a brief snapshot as to what a social media calendar will look like. And as you can see, we have everything segmented here in these two examples as to the date, the time, the program, the topic, any links. One thing I like to do, which is another recommendation if you really want to get creative and start something very low key, really easy to do, host a Facebook live streaming Q&A session with prospect students, kind of like an ask me anything type event. So like ask me anything about the program, ask me anything about financial aid, about research, whatnot, and we'll bring in guest speakers during those sessions to talk about that topic at hand. So if we're talking about, admissions, we'll have admissions. If we're talking about scholarship and financial aid opportunities, we'll have a member from financial aid there. If we're talking about research, we'll have maybe our program director there to talk about student research initiatives. So this is a really good thing to use that's totally free, and you could share it all across social media. The second recommendation is to make all of your posts about engagement, not just the text in the post. As I said before, you want to add pictures and videos and links that catch the attention of prospects. And by inserting call buttons or call to action buttons like click here, also promote students to click or make an inquiry or learn more about a program. And as I just said before, having those Facebook Live sessions will engage a larger target audience to increase your prospects. And as I said before, these videos can be shared across a bunch of different social media accounts. So when it comes to marketing, social media, sharing is caring, ladies and gentlemen. Share, share, share. And then finally, the third recommendation I have, which will really help you with your budgets, is to conduct a SWOT analysis. So for those that don't know what a SWOT analysis is, it looks at your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And conduct that analysis about every 2 to 3 years on your social media and e-marketing practices to ensure you're keeping pace with industry standards. So a good way to get started by doing a SWOT analysis is to secret shop 5 of your major competitors, so 5 other institutions that you may feel, I might lose a student to XYZ institution, and research those competitors and examine what they're doing for social media and e-marketing outreach to prospects. This will allow you to better identify what are you doing well, what aren't you doing well, what could you improve on, are your marketing tactics similar or different, and then based off of your SWOT analysis, that will allow you to then leverage the almighty dollar and say, okay, if we're not doing this well, here's what we need to do to make it better. And here's 3 things that we could do, but in order to do those, we need more money. So a SWOT analysis could be your best friend strategically when it comes time to going to your supervisors and saying, I need you to give me an extra $30,000 in social media marketing money, and here's why. If our competitors are doing this stuff and we're not, we could lose out on students, and that'll significantly reduce our tuition revenue and negatively affect our ROI. So this is a strategy that you could use to help argue and make your case for more money. So this is a key recommendation that I like to make at the very end.
Yeah, and I love that, Stan. I just want to mention that, I also would encourage my the faculty that I partnered with, the graduate program directors, to do similar work for their specific programs. And in doing so, I just recommend that when you get feedback, if you need to, this can be a really nice kind of marketing development and training opportunity. I had one program director who came back to me and said, I don't even want to talk to you about what I found. And I said, why? What's going on? And she said, well, this competitor of ours is just everywhere. I mean, I can't imagine what their marketing budget is. It must be like $100,000. And I said, well, why do you say that? And she said, every single website that I go to, they are advertising on it. Well, this was a marketing education moment, right? Because she didn't understand or have an idea of what retargeting was all about. Well, since she had gone to their webpage, right, they had a retargeting pixel on their webpage, so that every place that she went, both on social channels and also where there was advertising real estate on web pages she was visiting, she was seeing their ads. And those campaigns are actually not super expensive to do.
They're
But
not.
she just didn't fully understand the kind of behind the scenes technology that allows us to be that targeted, right? So these are really good kind of educational opportunities too, for us as GEM professionals.
Absolutely. Excellent point, Jack. So a quick recap. So this afternoon, we discussed the integrated interdependence model of GEM and how important it is and how it has a positive impact on graduate student recruitment. We looked at my study on social media and e-marketing practices and found out that while social media is similar in many ways at colleges and universities, they could differentiate themselves with various e-marketing tactics, but also certain ways in which they're using social media for not only marketing their programs, but also researching on the back end, as I showed with LinkedIn alumni, how they could research their prospective applicant pool and try to find a larger target audience to market to. So again, as I said before, and I reiterate, if colleges and universities want to recruit more students, they need a healthier GEM marketing budget. So by creating that SWOT analysis, that'll help you bring some fire to the table to advocate for more money for your division, for your marketing budget. We also explored different examples and ideas for social media and marketing tactics. And we also found that institutions should plan out social media and marketing campaigns. Your content should focus on student engagement, so don't put a bunch of fluff in there. Get straight to the point and engage them. Have those conversations, have those live Facebook sessions, engage with your students, and conduct that SWOT analysis to maintain a competitive advantage in your market against your other institutions. Because as we say in general business, if you're not at or ahead of the curve, you are behind the curve. And it's a lot harder to get back up when you're that far down. So that wraps up my formal presentation. I want to thank you again, Jack and Capture Higher Ed, for the invitation this afternoon to speak about my research in this very important topic for our practitioners and higher education professionals. And at this time, I'd like to entertain any questions that the audience has.
Stan, thank you. It was our pleasure to have you join us. And I will say that for folks who are trying to kind of make the case for a healthier and more robust GEM marketing budget, I do offer free assessments. So if you want to chat about some of the pains that you're experiencing or some best practices in terms of a lot of what Stan talked about today from a social media marketing perspective, digital marketing, kind of comprehensive graduate enrollment marketing, feel free to reach out at capturehighered.com. I'm always happy to set aside 30, 45 minutes to chat about things, and then I'll turn around kind of a recommendation solutions document that will have, I kind of take a blue sky perspective, right? That budget is not an issue. So it'll have all kinds of solutions, some of which you can implement for free. Others, of course, would cost some dollars, but you would have that as a document to be able to go back to your finance office, your centralized university marketing budget, and say, hey, here are some of the things that we'd like to do. Here are some of the things that it seems like it might cost, and you can begin to make that case. So, anyway, feel free to reach out, and I'm sure, Stan, that you're willing to provide some guidance as well if folks want to go ahead and email you.
Absolutely. If individuals want to touch base with me, my contact information is on the screen. I'd be more than happy to kind of go over a SWOT analysis with you, kind of do a little research with you as well, look at who your competitors are, kind of come up with a bit of a SWOT analysis to say, okay, here's what I found. Did you find similar things? Where do you think you could improve? Where do you see your enrollment going in the next 3 to 5 years? And try to come up with some suggestions and some ideas as well. So I'm always open to having conversations with individuals who are looking at improving their social media and e-marketing practices. It's a research and a professional interest of mine. So I'm more than happy to speak with any of our colleagues out there in the higher education field.
Great. Alicia, I have some questions here that have come in from our friends who are joining us. Do you want to start on your side, or do you want me to go ahead and start?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I've got one for you right here. This one is for Stan. It says, Dr. K, curious of your staff size to help with you managing these efforts. I'm going to assume that's all your social media efforts.
Could you repeat that?
Sure. It's curious about your staff size to help you managing these digital marketing efforts.
Got it. So that was actually a question as well in the study, looking at how many people are dedicated towards this initiative, because we all know for those that do social media, it could take a lot of time. So in our office, we delegate all of our social media through our marketing communications department. When I was in my old position, we would have one full-time staff member in the admissions division dedicated towards pushing out all social media content related to admissions, both undergraduate and graduate. So some schools will have, one full-time person. Some schools may have a professional where it's maybe half-time of their responsibilities. Some may have a part-time person, and like my institution, some schools may just completely let that go to marketing communications. However, even though that's the route we go, we do provide a lot of input and ideas for content with respect to social media campaigns and certain posts and topics that would be engaging to students.
Yeah, and I would just say that in my case, this was always something from I was fortunate to be able to have a graduate assistant that would work in the office. So we would work collaboratively to develop the social media calendar. And then that individual would then go ahead and do some of the content cultivation and then go ahead and do a lot of the placements. So sometimes from a staffing perspective and from a budget perspective, you have to be resourceful.
Absolutely.
All right, Jack. Why don't you go ahead with your questions that you've gotten?
Sure. So I received a question here. Stan, I think this is more of a clarifying question. You were talking about virtual career fairs. Could an institution also mean virtual or online information sessions?
Good question. So some schools may have their own virtual information sessions, and that is that those types of events are typically organized and ran directly by the institution. What I mean by a graduate career fair or a graduate an online virtual fair is a fair that's put on by a certain company or a certain organization that attracts a large amount of students and receives participation from a large amount of schools across the country. For example, I work in the medical school space, so the AAMC, which is responsible for everything that is medical school admissions for allopathic medical schools, so MD programs, they host every year 2 virtual recruitment fairs where recruiters can log online, they can have a virtual booth, and they could chat with students all across the United States and even across the globe who are interested in pursuing an allopathic medical education in the United States. So they are a little bit different in what I mean contextually. So virtual fairs are a little bit different than virtual open houses or information sessions that are typically organized and delivered directly by the institution.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Thanks for clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Do you modify your posts based on the platform, Facebook versus LinkedIn versus Twitter, etc.?
Yes, that's a great question. So, of course, when you're looking at different platforms, the way in which you're going to modify your post is going to be contingent upon a couple of things. Number one, the audience in which you're engaging, and number two, if you have any limitations based off what you can, like any limitations based on how long a post could be. So, like Twitter, you only have a certain amount of characters that you could put into a post. So you really have to be short, sweet, and to the point when using Twitter. With LinkedIn, I usually try to market LinkedIn to more of those professionals that have been in industry for a couple of years that are looking to advance their career and do school on the side. So my content that I would push out on LinkedIn for a certain post may be a little bit different than the same post I would put on Facebook, where Facebook would engage all audiences. LinkedIn would be more towards those everyday Monday through Friday 9 to 5 family workers or professionals who are looking to go to school at night to advance their career or change careers. So while the practice may be the same and the content may be the same, the delivery in which you're going to do that will be a little bit different from platform to platform.
Great, thank you. We do have a couple questions that unfortunately we are not going to have time to answer, and I apologize for that. We are up against it, but know that we will be passing on those questions to Dr. Kania so that he can go ahead and email a response to you. So rest assured your question will be answered. Stan, thank you so much for taking the time today to share your study with us and to have this important conversation. We really, really appreciate it.
No problem, Jack. It's been my pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate the opportunity.
You got it. I want to remind folks that check out capturehighered.com/webinars for that State of GEM webinar when we were showing that GEM interdependent model earlier today. It's a fun webinar to listen to. And also on Monday, Capture's podcast The Buzz will have its second episode dropping, so feel free and make sure that you listen to that and subscribe to that podcast about all things going on in higher ed. Alicia, I'm going to turn it back to you to take us out.
All right. Well, thank you, Jack, and thank you, Dr. Kania, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar, Social Media and Digital Marketing, Tips to Boost Your Graduate Recruitment. You'll receive a follow-up email within 48 hours with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. On behalf of Capture Higher Ed and our presenters, thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.